Hello and welcome. I'm aware it's been several weeks since I've last recorded and posted an episode. It seems sometimes the longer the time away from something, the more momentum builds in that direction. And it felt the harder it was to return to record, the more time has gone by. I'd always be thinking, it's been a long time and it's probably a good time to record an episode, but then it just wouldn't happen. Or there'll be a thought that, okay, perhaps I can do it tomorrow. Perhaps tomorrow is a good time. And it's an example of letting go almost as well. In some ways being aware that this recording could never have taken place besides this moment. We may have intentions in our mind about, I'm going to try and do this tomorrow, but the common question is, how much are we in control of what happens? Sometimes we have the illusion that we have all of the control. That when I say I'm going to do this at this particular time, then it's going to happen. So I haven't been doing any reading in regards to the spiritual books that I have. The only book I'm reading is the Miracle of Mindfulness, which I'm reading on the episodes themselves, but I do have other books lined up to read as well, such as A New Earth by Eckhart, Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh, and one or two other books as well that I would like to get to. And as I mentioned, recording is an incentive to read more, to make use of this time to read for myself and to share the readings with you as well. But I have been watching some lectures by a spiritual, I don't know if you would call himself a spiritual teacher, but that's how I view this individual of Ram Dass. He's got various lectures on YouTube. And again, these labels are very, I think spiritual teachers would be the first to tell you that, they're only spiritual teachers in that capacity when they are sharing pointers, but after that they're not teachers in that way. It's just, Eckhart's quite transparent when he mentions that himself, when he's on stage and sharing pointings and having a spiritual discussion. He's in that moment, in that capacity, he's a spiritual teacher, and then the moment he steps off stage, that doesn't go with him. And Mooji mentioned something I read in one of his quotes on either Twitter or Instagram, that even labeling yourself as a seeker can actually create a division there. Because what you're actually seeking is what you are. So saying you're a seeker, you've already created a separation. So just one thing to be aware of when it comes to labels. Any label in some ways is fine, as long as there's a practical use to, sometimes we may share with somebody in a conversation where language needs to be used, and you may say you're on a spiritual journey, but truly you're not. There is no distance in this journey, or it's in some ways it's not perceived as a journey. You just simply are, and you're simply deepening in that isness, that beingness. But to explain this with somebody who may not have this understanding, it's not going to make sense in that way. So of course we can remain flexible with labels, and they have their place. So for myself, I've been dealing with some physical ailments in the last couple of weeks, some physical pain, and as you know, if you've been listening to these episodes for a while, I've been dealing with my mental health. Has been my most that's been almost the focus for myself. The everyday challenge, dealing with mental health. But now, the last couple of weeks, my physical health has had some challenges as well. And it's just going through a place of processing and accepting that, okay, this is what I'm dealing with in this moment. And labels are quite prevalent when it comes to, anything medical, health related. But I've tried to be aware of balancing, making, there's a use for labels, but also knowing that I'm not that as well. All these labels are just simply a way of communication. It's not an identity that, my name is this, I suffer from these ailments, this mental health condition, and it can very easily become your identity. And it's understandable because it's so intimate in some respects. You're dealing with it in every moment. A mental health challenge or a physical ailment you have, it's always there. So it's very easy to slip into identity when it comes to that. So we are very fortunate in this time where there are lots of books and videos from various spiritual teachers. There's lots of content available, different styles, different backgrounds. So hopefully there's something for everyone. And maybe there'll be a teacher that you resonate with more than other teachers, and just want to acknowledge the abundance in that regard. one thing we all probably are dealing with right in this moment is uncertainty, especially with COVID being a global issue. It's affecting every area of people's lives, home life, work life. There's lots of uncertainty there. That's something that has come up for me, where sometimes there's been fear attached to it, or there's been a sense of helplessness. But also it's almost in itself a portal to go deeper into the present moment. We talked about suffering being a great friend, and this itself is a form of suffering when you are worrying and, this could happen, that could happen, what about if this scenario, what if this isn't there anymore? So if there's nothing practical that can be done in this moment, or there's nothing that needs to be done to help with upcoming challenges, then a lot of these worries are simply just energy being used up inside of you, or blocked inside of you as well. These worries are not flowing through in awareness. So these are the portals that I'm using myself, my condition of my health, my physical health and mental health, and externally circumstances. All of this is okay because it is. Okay being the present moment as things are in this very moment. They simply are. You can't argue against them. Well, you can, but it may not be advisable. Okay, so I'm going to continue reading from The Miracle of Mindfulness, and perhaps it may take an episode or two for me to get back into the flow of things as well. Even though it's only been a few weeks, it seems like it's been a lot longer. So this passage is called A Ride on the Waves of Birth and Death. I cannot leave out the problem of life and death. Many young people and others have come out to serve others and to labour for peace through their love for all who are suffering. They are always mindful of the fact that the most important question is the question of life and death, but often not realizing that life and death are but two faces of one reality. Once we realize that we will have the courage to encounter both of them, When I was only 19 years old, I was assigned by an older monk to meditate on the image of a corpse in a cemetery, but I found it very hard to take and resisted the meditation. Now I no longer feel that way. Then I thought that such a meditation should be reserved for older monks. But since then, I have seen many young soldiers lying motionless beside one another, some only 13, 14, and 15 years old. They had no preparation or readiness for death. Now I see that if one doesn't know how to die, one can hardly know how to live, because death is a part of life. Just 2 days ago, Moby told me that she thought at 20 one was old enough to meditate on the corpse. She has only turned 21 herself. We must look death in the face, recognize and accept it, just as we look at and accept life. The Buddhist Sutra on Mindfulness speaks about the meditation on the corpse. Meditate on the decomposition of the body, how the body bloats and turns violet, how it is eaten by worms, until only bits of blood and flesh still cling to the bones. Meditate up to the point where only white bones remain, which in turn are slowly worn away and turn into dust. Meditate like that, knowing that your own body will undergo the same process. Meditate on the corpse until you are calm and at peace, until your mind and heart are light and tranquil, and a smile appears on your face. Thus, by overcoming revulsion and fear, life will be seen as infinitely precious, every second of it worth living. And it is not just our own lives that are recognized as precious, but the lives of every other person, every other being, every other reality. We can no longer be deluded by the notion that the destruction of others' lives is necessary for our own survival. We see that life and death are but two faces of life, and that without both, life is not possible, just as two sides of a coin are needed for the coin to exist. Only now is it possible to rise above birth and death, and to know how to live and how to die. The sutra says that the bodhisattvas who have been into the reality of interdependence have broken through all narrow views and have been able to enter birth and death as a person takes a ride in a small boat without being submerged or drowned by the waves of birth and death. Some people have said that if you look at reality with the eyes of a Buddhist, you become pessimistic. But to think in terms of either pessimism or optimism oversimplifies the truth. The problem is to see reality as it is. A pessimistic attitude can never create the calm and serene smile which blossoms on the lips of the bodhisattvas and all others who obtain the way. So I'm going to leave it there. And save the next passage and chapter. We will now be on chapter 6. of this book. Coming up to halfway through, and I'll save that for another recording, and I will leave this one as it is. So perhaps we can share a few moments of just absorbing what has been read and said, not to remember with the mind, but almost absorbing it as the body absorbs nutrients. Perhaps we can cultivate some calmness in the next minute or so. And this is the calmness without effort, the calmness that comes by simply letting go of everything, allowing the body to simply relax and just allow life to flow through you, allow life to take care of life. And we are here as the witness, as the observer to this play. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I wish you well in this one moment, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Take care.